Good morning, church.
Morning.
If you have your swords, let's take out our swords and raise them up and repeat after me. The Word of God,
the absolute
is the absolute truth, and the
final authority.
All right, quick reminders. Wednesday we started a new study. We're going to start in 2 Samuel chapter 1. Go ahead and read through it. The sermon is going to be posted Wednesday evening. This morning we're going to be in Exodus chapter 14. Exodus chapter 14. We're going to continue our study through the book of Exodus. And we're going to see that our text this morning is going to cover one of the most amazing events that we have in the scriptures. And that is the crossing of the Red Sea. I'm pretty sure we've all seen the Ten Commandments. And we sit through 3 hours of the movie just so we could see how the Red Sea parted. I can remember fondly going to Universal Studios in Hollywood as a youngster. And on their tram tour, and one of the lots that they would go into was one of the lake that would actually part. And it's where they wound up filming, where Paramount wound up filming scenes from the Ten Commandments. The tram would actually go through where the lake had parted, and it would actually drive through the lake. All right, so it's very fascinating events, the Red Sea crossing. Now, as amazing as it is, I read about a 9-year-old boy named Joey, who after church on Sunday, he was asked by his mom what he had learned in Sunday school. He says, "Well, Mom, our teacher told us how God sent Moses behind enemy lines on a rescue mission to lead the Israelites out of Egypt. And when he got to the Red Sea, he had his engineers build a pontoon bridge over the Red Sea. And all the people walked safely across the Red Sea. But then, Mom, the Egyptian army came, and they started to cross, and they started to come after them. So Moses gets on his walkie-talkie, and he winds up calling headquarters, and he asks for reinforcements. And they wound up sending 2 bombers that came in, and they wound up bombing the bridge while the Egyptians were on it, and the Israelites were saved." Mom responded, "Now, Joey, is that really what the teacher taught you?" "Well, no, Mom. But if I told you the way that the teacher told us," what he said was, "you would never believe it." And I pray, church, that today, as we wind up reading the accounts of the Red Sea crossing, that we will not have any Joeys in the audience. But as amazing as the Red Sea crossing is, I believe that the application for you and me today is, what was the reason behind the children of Israel having to come and cross the Red Sea in the first place? So that's what we're going to be discussing this morning. Before we get started, let's go ahead and bow our hearts in prayer. Heavenly Father, once again, as we come before you, we thank you. We thank you for all the tremendous blessings that you bestowed upon each and every one of us. Right now, I just pray that you just anoint the words that are going to be spoken this morning. I pray that you anoint our hearts to be able to receive the word that is going to be spoken this morning. I pray that it may be your word and your word alone, and not man's. Guide us, open up the scriptures to us. Comfort those that need comforting, and convict those that need convicting. Help us to draw closer to you, to pursue godliness, and to finish the race strong. Meet us here this morning, church, wherever we are, and I just lift this up to you in your precious and holy name. And everyone said, Amen. Amen. All right, Exodus chapter 14. You might remember in our last study, the 10th wonder was unleashed upon Pharaoh, and it wound up bringing Pharaoh to his knees. And after all the firstborn in Egypt were killed, he calls Moses and Aaron into his palace, and he orders the children of Israel out of here. He says, "I'm done with you, get out." He commands them to leave. So the exodus out of Egypt begins. At least 2 million Israelites start making their journey toward the promised land. And we wound up seeing at the end of our chapter 13 that God led them. in the pillar of cloud by day, and he gave them shade from the hot sun. And then by night he led them in the pillar of fire. When the pillar of cloud and fire moved, they were supposed to move. When it sat still, they were supposed to sit still. As long as they kept their eyes on the cloud and the fire, they would be reminded of God's presence and his power. So let's see how good they do. Exodus 14, verse 1. Now the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, speak to the children of Israel that they turn, make a note, they turn, and camp before Pi-Hahiroth, between Migdol and the sea, opposite Baal and Zephon, and you shall camp before it by the sea. For Pharaoh will say of the children of Israel, they are bewildered by the land, the wilderness has closed them in. Then I will harden Pharaoh's heart, so that he will pursue them, and I will gain honor over Pharaoh and over all his armies, that the Egyptians may know that I am the Lord. And they did so. Up to this point, the children of Israel were following a well-known trade route out of Egypt as they were going on to Midian. This is probably the same route that Moses wound up taking when he wound up fleeing Egypt 40 years earlier. And because God is serving as their GPS, remember, he's the pillar of cloud and the pillar of fire, he commands them to make the next right turn and head into a narrow valley between two mountain ranges. The name, that Pi-Hahiroth, actually means mouth of the gorges. So again, they're going in between these two mountain ranges as they go to Midian. And God also winds up commanding them to camp by the sea. So picture 2 million people being boxed in nowhere, with nowhere to go. They are sitting ducks. They are trapped. You know? They have the two mountain ranges on two sides, and then you have the Red Sea on the other side. Nowhere to go. Question, who led them there? A lot of times when we get ourselves into trouble, it is because of the decisions that we wind up making. But who led the Israelites into this trap? It was God. God led them there. And again, usually it is our own decisions that put us into these situations. But here we have an example where God led them into the mess. So the question is, why is God leading them into this trap? And I see 3 reasons. Reason 1, so the children of Israel can learn to trust him. You see, God is providing the Red Sea moment to develop their faith. This is going to be a learning experience for them. James chapter 1, verse 2 and 4 says, my brethren, count it all joy when you fall into various trials. Why? Knowing that the testing of your faith produces patience, but let patience have its perfect work, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking nothing. Church, in the life of the believer, we cannot learn to trust him if we never encounter a Red Sea moment. We will not be able to trust the Lord. A Red Sea moment for the believer can be a loss of a job. It could be marriage problems, health problems, a loss of a loved one, any type of adversity. And some of us may be going through our own Red Sea moments right now. But think about this. If we never encounter a Red Sea, if we live lives without any type of trials, right, we will never see God part the Red Seas that occur in our lives. So again, it's all done so we can learn to trust him. The second reason that God is leading them into this mess, into this trap, is so that he can condition them for their journey ahead. As believers, the difficulties in our lives are designed to keep us from falling away. Right? They make us stronger. They cause us to persevere. They condition us. Romans 5:3 says, and not only that, but we also glory in tribulations. Why? Knowing that tribulation produces what? perseverance. I'm pretty sure that we all know someone that walked away from the Lord because they have been disillusioned by some type of difficulty, right? It got too hard, and guess what? They walked away. But instead of embracing the suffering and clinging to the Lord and allowing Him to work in them and through them, what do? They blame God. They blame God, and it becomes that driving force that winds up leading them away. The third reason that God is leading the children of Israel into this mess, into this test, was so that the Egyptians would know who He is. One of the things we have to realize is that as believers, many times we go through trials so that non-believers can see how we wind up responding to trials. Many times people will come to the Lord by seeing the actions of so-called believers and how they respond to trials. 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 11 and 12 says, "For we who live are always delivered to death for Jesus' sake, that the life of Jesus also may be manifested in our mortal flesh. So then death is working in us, but life in you." Yeah, we're living testimony. How we respond to these Red Sea moments, God uses it so other people can come to Him. Our difficulties are designed to bring others to Christ. Verse 5. Now it was told the king of Egypt that the people had fled, and the heart of Pharaoh and his servants was turned against the people, and they said, "Why have we done this? That we have let Israel go from serving us?" So he made ready his chariot and took his people with him. The Egyptians, since they are no longer being bombarded by plague after plague, they begin to realize that their entire workforce is now gone. And they begin to ask themselves, why did we even allow the children of Israel to leave in the first place? You know, apparently they forgot the plague of the frogs and the plague of the hail and all that other stuff, right? They're all suffering from short memory loss. They regret letting the children of Israel go. Church, this is a picture of a non-believer who in the midst of a crisis cries out to God, only to go back on His promises to believe and follow Him if He helps them. Once deliverance comes, guess what? They go back to their own ways. Verse 7. Also he took 600 choice chariots and all the chariots of Egypt, with captains over every one of them. Verse 8. And the Lord hardened the heart of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and he pursued the children of Israel, and the children of Israel went out with boldness. At this time, the chariot was the most sophisticated weapon of its day. Pharaoh had 600 choice chariots. These were the king's guard. These chariots were equipped with 3 warriors. They had one person driving and the other 2 people in the chariot that were fighting. But Pharaoh also sends his normal chariots. And these were ones that had 1 or 2 people on them. Remember, the Israelites had no army. They had no weapons. They were brick makers. They had no swords. They had no spears. Excuse me. There was no way they're going to be able to put up a fight against Pharaoh's chariots. Verse 9. So the Egyptians pursued them and all the horses and chariots of Pharaoh, his horsemen, and his people, and overtook them camping by the sea besides Pi-Hahiroth, before Baal-Zephon. And when Pharaoh drew near, the children of Israel lifted their eyes, and behold, the Egyptians marched after them. So they were very afraid, and the children of Israel cried out to the Lord. Make a note of that. The children of Israel cried out to the Lord. Now, I had you make a note that the children of Israel cried out This was a cry of fear. They were panicked. This is the first of many times that they will cry out in the wilderness. It is a cry of complaining. You know, it comes at a time of crisis and fear as they are boxed in with these two mountain ranges on each side, the Red Sea's on the other side, and the Egyptian army is barreling down on them with their chariots. But what was the problem? What was the problem with the children of Israel? Church. Their problem is the same problem that you and I face from time to time. And that is an I problem. That is an I problem. It's an E-Y-E problem. You see, it was what they decided to look at. It was what they decided to see. It was how they decided to interpret what their eyes saw. Remember what we said last week? As long as they kept their eyes on the pillar of cloud and the pillar of fire, guess what? They were fine. They were led, they remembered God was leading them, everything was okay. But as soon as they took their eyes off of God, and they looked back at the Egyptian armies, and they looked at the chariots, fear and anxiety started to set in, and they started to murmur. And then they started complaining. And you know what murmur and complaining eventually wind up doing? It winds up leading to rebellion against God. This is a warning, church. If we are a type of believer that is prone to murmuring, if we are a type of believer that is prone to complaining, the next natural step in the process is rebellion against God. The children of Israel lifted up their eyes to see the Egyptians. Their problem was that they didn't lift up their eyes high enough to see their protector. Verse 11. Then they said to Moses, because there were no graves in Egypt, have you taken us away to die in the wilderness? Why have you so dealt with us to bring us out of Egypt? Is this not the word that we told you in Egypt, saying, let us alone that we may serve the Egyptians? For it would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than we should die in the wilderness. It had only been a few days since they had left Egypt. Many theologians put anywhere between a week and a half. They went from elation and boldness, and now they sunk into despair and fear. Even after everything they had witnessed God do, both in Egypt and in the wilderness, their faith was completely gone. They thought they were about to die, and in their eyes, slavery looked pretty good compared to certain death. 13. And Moses said to the people, do not be afraid. Stand still and see the salvation of the Lord, which he will accomplish for you today. For the Egyptians whom you serve today, you shall see again no more forever. The Lord will fight for you, and you shall hold your peace. And the Lord said to Moses, why do you cry to me? Tell the children of Israel to go forward. Moses had been praying, which is a good thing. However, God told Moses that the time for praying was over. It was a time now for doing. As believers, we should have times be set aside for prayer, right? We should often pray with and for one another. And we should be praying at all times, communing and having fellowship with God in our hearts. However, there are times when praying becomes a stall tactic. You feel God has led you in to do something, and so in what's it called? You're like, well, have you made any progress? I'm praying about it. I'm praying about it. I'm praying about it. I'm praying about it. It becomes a stall tactic. It becomes a form of spiritual procrastination. We need to pray, but then we also need to act. Moses was to lead by example, and here he was supposed to act. 16. But lift up your rod and stretch out your hand over the sea and divide it, and the children of Israel shall go on dry ground through the midst of the sea. this would not have been my first choice, right? Why couldn't God simply rain massive hail on the approaching army? Or why couldn't he have wild beasts devour them? Or some other way in which I was simply a spectator and not a participant? That would have been a lot easier, right? I just want to watch the show. I don't want to be part of the show. You see, church, it is never about defeating the enemy. Because that's the easy part for God. It's about growing our faith. You know, we are his great workmanship, and he takes every opportunity to create us more and more in the image of Jesus Christ. He wants us to be those participants, not just a spectator in the church. 17. And I indeed will harden the heart of the Egyptians, and they shall follow them. So I will gain honor over Pharaoh and over all his army, his chariots, and his horsemen. Once again, Pharaoh's heart was already hardened. God simply is using Pharaoh's own wrath against his people to his honor. 18. Then the Egyptians shall know that I am the Lord when I have gained honor for myself over Pharaoh, his chariots, and his horsemen. Back at the beginning, I think it was Exodus chapter 5. When Moses and Aaron first come before Pharaoh, and they give him the message from the Lord to let my people go. And Pharaoh responded, who is it? Who is it? After sending Pharaoh 10 plagues, guess what? God was not done answering Pharaoh's question. And he's going to use this miracle to speak to Pharaoh and to Egypt as much as he used it to speak to the children of Israel. So again, he was reinforcing the children of Israel. He was reinforcing their faith. He was helping them to trust him. But he was also speaking to the Egyptian people as well and declaring who he was. 19. And the angel of God, who went before the camp of Israel, moved and went behind them, and the pillar of cloud went before them and stood behind them. Make a note of the angel of God. Once again, here we see a Christophany or a theophany in Scripture. This was a manifestation of Jesus Christ in the Old Testament. Jesus Christ was the pillar of cloud leading them. In the same way that he leads us and guides us. But the thing I want to draw your attention is that he doesn't simply lead us. Right? God is not like, hurry up, follow me, hurry up, hurry up. No. He also watches our back, which is what he winds up doing here. He goes behind them, and he winds up watching the back of the children of Israel. 20. So it came between the camp of the Egyptians and the camp of Israel. Thus it was a cloud and darkness to the one, and it gave light by night to the other, so that the one who did not come near the other all that night. There was a clear separation between the two groups. One was a kingdom enshrouded in darkness. That was the Egyptians, as soon as the pillar of cloud went over them. The other was a kingdom of light, the children of Israel. The same cloud that was darkness to the Egyptians was light for God's children.